Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have had a wonderful day thus far. Today, I have for you the final piece of content for Game Week 16, which is, of course, solving your problems. I will have unique insights on Liverpool defenders, following a conversation with a friend last night, why Semenyo's output might rise, and many other things, including what we should be doing with Gabriel following Arteta's comment. If you have not subscribed already, if you are one of the 40.3% of people who regularly watch but have not pressed the button, I would be greatly appreciative as we push for 6,000 subscribers. I will check the number again tonight so that I have a new number for you. And you don't have to keep hearing the 40.3%. If you do enjoy the video, make sure to like it, but without anything else needing to be said, let's get into it. Starting with the injury updates as well as the press conference updates. Arteta said initially that one of Gabriel or Calafiori had trained and was in contention for a start against Everton, or at least to be in the squad. He didn't mention which one, and to which the reporter then asked him which one, and he confirmed that it was Gabriel. So, as Arteta said, he is a possibility for Saturday. I think this is pretty good. The fact that he's trained, and the fact that Arteta said he's a possibility, which, to be fair with him, you could take the other way around. But the fact he's trained mainly, I think, gives me far more security with regards to how I view his minutes. And even if he doesn't play on Saturday, okay, fine, he should be back for the next game week, which is just in another week, because we do have a normal schedule for a little while. And when it comes to him, and I would say he's probably the best defender in the game, considering his box threat, Arsenal set pieces, and the defensive capabilities as a side, I would say it's an unnecessary sell, especially if you have some value stored in him. One interesting observation from the Arsenal-Monaco game was that they approached the set-piece conundrum slightly differently and left 3 up to essentially mean that Arsenal couldn't put as many numbers in the box because they had to cover for the counter-attacking threat. Now, if that is a solution that a lot of sides think could work, maybe they could do it against Arsenal as well, and their set-piece threat will be somewhat reduced, specifically from corner. So that is something to consider going forward. For those of you who still hold Ollie Watkins, which I can't imagine will be many of you, not only would I be encouraging you to sell him, especially when Alexander Isak exists, and you would have seen my team selection yesterday, he might not even start because he has to be assessed due to the injury he picked up in midweek. So really, this is probably a sell. Marcus Tavernier is out for Bournemouth with a hamstring injury, and this is quite a big deal, as I will touch on later. And this isn't everything, right? Like, these aren't obviously all the updates from all press conferences. They're just the ones that I thought was most relevant to FPL. Senesi's out for 3 to 4 months, which means you now have a 4.3 million starting defender, or most likely have a 4.3 million starting defender given his form, should you wish to go there. I'm not super bullish on Bournemouth's fixtures anymore from a defensive standpoint. They've had a few of the good ones gone already. And personally, I would be avoiding, and you'll see when I come onto the fixture analysis later as to why. But for those of you who need a facilitator, and in the short to medium term it's not too bad, then you could go here. Neto suspended, and the reason why I think this is a pretty big deal is because it almost certainly means Madueke comes into the side, especially considering he didn't start against Spurs on that right-hand side. Whether you think this is good or bad for Palmer, some people say it's not as good because Madueke tends to be a little bit more selfish and is a little bit more direct in nature, let's say, whereas some think he can increase his assist threat, Palmer, resultant of the way that Madueke plays. So you can take your pick as to that, but I thought I would just let you know. I touched on the City injuries for 2 reasons. One, Guardiola's prospects. No Akanji, no Ake, no Stones, which means that there's no Rico Lewis, so he's very unlikely to play left back, which means his attacking output probably goes down, especially considering the volume of injuries they have at centre back. And they also become a worse defence without Ake and Akanji in particular. So his clean sheet prospects go down. Now, that's not great for him. And we touched on him in the Everything You Need to Know video. So if you want some more depth on whether I think you should buy or sell or keep, then you can go and refer to that. But flipping it on its head, looking at Man United's prospects for the likes of managers who are going to hold Bruno Fernandes, for the guys who are potentially punting on Højlund, given he's found some form, and I really don't think Xerxes is a right fit for Man United at the moment. Well, that could potentially, no, not potentially, it almost does increase their prospects. So that's something to look out for. Newcastle, and I mean this with the utmost respect, I really do. Pope is out, and honestly, I think that could be a good thing for Lewis Hall's clean sheet chances. I'm personally not a big Nick Pope fan. I haven't been for a while, and I just think he's too error-prone, essentially, and doesn't provide that safety and security that I want from a keeper. Someone like Hermansen, for example, is top in that sense. From the lower sides, he really stands out in that sense. And yeah, I think as a result, maybe Lewis Hall's clean sheet chances rises, and that'll be good for owners such as myself. But now we can move on to solving the rest of your problems. Following a conversation with a friend last night, which went something like, should I sell Cunha and use the money I have in the bank to purchase Alexander Isak, or should I leave it alone and use that money in Game Week 18 to fund a Liverpool defensive asset? Following that conversation, I went and looked at the fixtures just to have a little bit more clarity surrounding them. And when I started to take a slightly deeper look, I realized that I probably interpreted them somewhat loosely and slightly wrong in the past. So I'm here to revisit that. And talking about taking a deeper look, I probably should have done that with the graphics. I'm in a slight rush for time, so I can't change it, but apologies for that in the first line with the double A. Now, Fulham at home, I think is quite a good fixture for the clean sheet prospects, right? Not only do they not have either of their centre backs, and I explained why that could mean they sustain more waves of pressure, but in terms of it being a double-edged sword, I wouldn't say, especially in those central areas, in terms of Smith Rowe and Alexander Isak, Raul Jimenez, they really boast that transitional threat. Yeah, sure, Alex Iwobi and definitely a drama Traore, but not so much in the middle, I would say. And Liverpool mitigate so well against them anyway nowadays that I don't think it's as big of a factor. So I quite like the clean sheet prospects there. I also don't mind them for Spurs away. You never really know what you're going to get with Spurs, especially with the injuries that they have. You should see a game where I think Liverpool win quite comfortably, especially considering how Chelsea performed after, let's say, the 25th minute. Maybe even like 15 minutes, right? So I think there's a decent chance for them to get something there. They're also poor at defending set pieces, so Trent's assist threat and Van Dijk's goal threat. And then Leicester at home is just a good fixture for clean sheet prospect, right? So whilst I wasn't so bullish on it in the short term, I actually like it a little bit more than I originally did. Then I look from game week 19. West Ham away is not an easy fixture to keep a clean sheet. Yeah, sure, they've not had the best of times, but they're only 1 point behind United and 2 behind Newcastle, who have had nowhere near as bad of a rep this season compared to those two sides. They hold a lot of attacking firepower, specifically in Paquetá, Somerville, Kudus, and Bowen. The latter two especially, and Somerville especially, right? The game model definitely invites some form of chaos, I would say, and it's away under the lights, right? Never the easiest conditions going to West Ham, and they also have a pretty good relationship with Manchester City. So who knows what favours they might do on that day. Man United at home, I would say, again, open to interpretation. I haven't been particularly impressed by their attacking patterns, and I would say a lot of their moments have come through individual brilliance as opposed to good, well-coached attacking patterns of play, which the players have really understood and embodied on the pitch. So you never really know what you're going to get from there. It could be a very good fixture for them. Equally, though, you've always got to attribute some risk to a fixture like Man United with the quality they have. And Man United, Forest away is tough for all the obvious reasons, and Brentford away is just a sea of goals at the moment. So those 4 fixtures I actually don't think are great for clean sheet prospects. And then you consider the opportunity cost in that period, right? Not only of the money that you're going to use up there so that you can't use in the forward line, but if you are to use the assistant manager in like 24-25, you're taking away free transfers in a somewhat close proximity to the usage of the chip, which may affect its utility down the line should you wish to use it in a more aggressive manner. And like I said, the price. So it's almost a double-edged sword there, where it wasn't previously. So I think if you're going to go there, I would rather get on sooner than later. And I have had a quite significant shift in perspective there, whereby if you're going to get them, I pretty much like them more for now for 16, 17, 18, as opposed to 19, 20, 21, 22. And that's what I just wanted to touch on. You may see it differently, and if you do, by all means, leave it in the comments so we can have a discussion about it. But that is how I perceive it as of now. Now, I should finish by saying that this has probably been the best defensive unit this year, if not Arsenal, right? You can have them at 1 or 2, and they are capable of keeping a clean sheet in all 4 of those games that I described as difficult. But that doesn't take away from the fact that it is still difficult, and there may be better opportunities presented elsewhere when you consider the price. And I was just thinking out loud. A lot of the content this week has been based around Alexander Isak versus Matthias Cunha. Should you sell him? Even though the fixtures potentially look to be there, are they actually slightly overrated in reality? And with the Wolves side performing as they are the conditions there for him to really put up the hauls that Isak put? And we've touched on that a lot. One thing that we haven't touched on, and that's been a frequent reoccurrence in the comments, is actually Isak versus Jackson. So I thought it best to touch on that specifically, as opposed to giving a more macro level, broader overview of these 3 assets. If I owned neither, I would pick Alexander Isak. 1, because I have more security over his expected minutes following Callum Wilson's injury. Wish him all the best. I like the Leicester fixture more than I initially did, now that I know that Ndidi and Samaria are out. Ipswich away is a decent fixture. I really like the Villa one, like it, because if they do what they did at Chelsea, where they limit transition somewhat by being slightly deeper and the space between the lines isn't really there, and they don't engage as as heavy of a transition game as they have in the past, then I don't think it's as good, but still good. And then, okay, fine, he has Man United away, Spurs away, but Spurs away really isn't that bad. Man United away, you really just never know what you're going to get with them. Albeit you can expect a more settled defense, as long as they don't make mistakes in build-up and in terms of the goalkeeper. And then from there until 24, the fixtures are really good. So I think there's a real longevity to this hold, and he could pretty much be a wonderful set and forget, and you don't have to worry about rotation. And you're getting a asset with good fundamentals and high ceiling. So I really like that. One of the reasons I would also pick him over Nicholas Jackson is for the reason I spoke about in transfer plans, in the transfer plan section in the team selection video yesterday, whereby Jackson could be rotated for Nkunku in 18 or 19. Okay, so that's that. Also, I would say the fixtures are probably better this week for Isak, even though Jackson has Brentford at home. And then Jackson's fixtures slightly tail off, like Everton away, Fulham at home, 2 good defenses, going to Goodison Park. That is probably not the easiest case. So in isolation, if I didn't own either, I would definitely go for Isak this week. However, would I move Jackson to Isak? And again, for the reason that I just spoke about, the fact that I honestly think the fixtures are better, as long as you can justify the transfer. And to be honest, it doesn't even have to be the most efficient usage in this spot. If you think his fixtures are fundamentally better, I don't mind the move. And I think I'm probably more open to placing Alexander Isak as a better asset compared to Nicholas Jackson than I was in the past. For example, when I grouped him in tier 1.5. Finally, to touch on Matthias Cunha again, one thing I didn't speak about is whilst I thought the fixtures in the short term could be slightly overrated, the fixtures after are really tough. Apart from maybe Spurs away, Man United away, and there's Forest, and there's Newcastle away, and then there's just a sea of grey and red. They're very tough for him. And at that price, he's actually becoming a little bit expensive, and I wouldn't classify him in that same category as I would or always support for the price is 7.1 million now. So not only would I be happy to move him on, but I really wouldn't be going there for some people who are considering that. I know a lot of the models are pushing him, and understandably so. But for me, when you take everything into account, I think a lot of you would have got points out of him, and now it's time to just move on. That's not to say he can't return against Leicester and Ipswich. Of course he can. He can return against anyone given the quality of player he is. But with the conditions he has around him, I wouldn't be as bullish. Some of you have been frustrated by the lack of returns Antoine Semenyo has put up in recent times. However, I am here to tell you that could potentially change. Marcus Tavernier has a hamstring injury. Now, what grade it is, I do not know, but you can imagine he's out for the short to medium term at least, which means there's a very good chance that Dango Otara could come back into the side, especially following on from his heroics against Ipswich. Now, one thing Semenyo's had going for him this season is Dango Otara's crosses. His ability to carry is really good, so he can get into the positions, and he's definitely got that burst of pace. He's got the explosivity in relation to his body, whereby he can get into those zones and has the quality of cross to consistently put them in to those good areas. Semenyo also seems to have a really good spatial awareness and understanding of where to be and when to be there, especially with relation to Dango Otara's crosses. And he scored from them and generated chances from them quite a few times this season, especially in the earlier stages. I consider one against Forest, I consider one against Arsenal, and there was another one as well. And for that reason specifically, I think Semenyo's output could go up. Because if you look at his goals this year, and you look at the chances he's accumulated, a lot of the better ones, a lot of the goals have come specifically from this one dynamic. And the volume of crosses is fairly high to him, all things considering. So I really wouldn't be surprised to see Semenyo's output rise, and I would give it maybe one more game before you consider selling. I know some people are considering doing that. Yesterday, I touched on the fact that I might sell Robert Sanchez in the near future, which prompted me to take a deeper dive into the goalkeepers and look at who could be potential replacements and who could be the best replacement. I was surprised by my findings. I assumed there would be 3 or 4 candidates that really presented themselves, and it would be a somewhat difficult selection. But after a fairly brief look, I personally came to the conclusion that there was one standout option for myself, and that was Dean Henderson. The first thing, and a big thing, 4.4 million, right? Look at the 3 other options I have here. Sells, 4.6, 4.7, 4.7. Leno, 5. Allison, 5.6. He's coming in at 4.4, especially with that assistant manager chip tool. I need at least 0.5 to 1.5 million spare, right, to use he's essentially providing that because I can sell Sanchez for 4.8 and get 0.4 out of that. That's basically paying for my Sean Dyche in game week 24. That is magnificent, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I would say out of all these three options, he has the best longevity of fixtures, of good fixtures at least. And thirdly, Palace have really improved from a defensive standpoint, even from an attacking standpoint as well. They're far more compact, and there's a lot we could talk about, but probably just watch the game and figure it out. And we don't need to discuss it in depth now until we get to the time where I'm actually going to buy him. So for me, I'm really looking at purchasing Dean Henderson, and I actually really, really, really like the selection. Just in general, having a back five as well is always, not always, but in general, probably better from a defensive standpoint when they boast some sense of compactness. And I know the manager's definitely been happier with their improvement there. I think really it is to do with the pivot and how they've been performing in a slightly different way. Not only have they been performing better, but I think the instructions that they've carried out have been slightly different, and it's helped. Moving on to the other options that I considered, Leno's 0.6 more expensive, and I think the fixtures are a little bit worse. They're okay in the short term, but they really don't last as long as Henderson's. Sells probably plays for the best defense outside of the not the traditional top four, the top four of City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea. But Palace are definitely catching up, and Nuno's shown a willingness to be more attacking, right? Specifically, when I saw that at the Etihad he was going to play with two wingers, I was like, okay, fair enough. He thinks Manchester City are there for the taking, and he wants to have those transitional threats in the side. So they're probably a little bit more attacking now. Alisson, he could be really good, and I think the ceiling's probably definitely there to an extent, considering the attacking firepower of the sides that they're going to face, and just in general in the league at the moment. But it's the price, right? A whole 0.8 more than Dean Henderson, and he would block a potential third Liverpool asset for double game week 24, which will be really interesting in terms of the strategy I adopt if I am to go for a Sean Dyche. Because if I do that, am I meant to be picking a third Liverpool asset and using a transfer for that anyway? So that'll definitely be interesting there. But for those of you who were looking for a goalkeeper in the near future to pick up, I am looking at Dean Henderson. Finally, I thought it would be good, especially considering the fixture congestion and the fixture swings coming up, to look ahead to what could be the best teams to target. So here I have a fixture table sorted by the fixtures from game week 18 to 24 in terms of quality, produced by Fantasy Football Hub. They have Chelsea at the top, and I'm just taking the top 10. They have Chelsea at the top, and we've obviously spoken a lot about their assets, especially in relation to my team, considering I own a triple up. Liverpool are there, no surprise really. But the ones I thought we would talk about is one, Newcastle. It supports my theory that the fixtures are really there for Alexander Isak to thrive for the medium term / long term, right? It's 7 weeks. It's a lot of game weeks. Crystal Palace, again, backs up my Dean Henderson theory for sure. And the players I spoke about yesterday, Eze, Mateta, all options. Who knows? Maybe I land on Triple Palace by the time we get to game week 19. Man United are an interesting one there. I imagine a lot of the waiting comes, well, to be fair, even Wolves away, Newcastle at home is not too bad. And then from 21 to 24, it's pretty good. So it's understandable why they're there. Rasmus Højlund could certainly present himself as an option, given his form, and he's a player I really, really like. When he's probably more refined, he will be a really, really good goal scorer. Not to say he can't put up the numbers now. Just look at what he did last season in that purple pouch. Fulham, we discussed them before. We discussed them yesterday. Iwobi, Smith Rowe, Jimenez, Robinson, Leno, all presenting you with options. Southampton, if one standout option presents itself, it's probably not the worst move in the world in the form of like an Adam Armstrong if he starts to pick up very consistent 90s, considering the way they play and the fact that he's had a decent run in the Premier League at some point as well. I think he picked up more points than Erling Haaland in a certain period. Talking about Erling Haaland, we all knew the fixture swing in 18 is going to be very difficult to justify him, especially with the new chip. However, for maybe a real short-term punt on Phil Foden, on Kevin De Bruyne, on Josko Gvardiol, at least there's the opportunity there, right? You know that the opportunity is there given the fixtures. Forest, we spoke about as well with sells, but someone alluded to this in the comments and I thought it was fantastic. What about a rotation between someone like Munoz and Robinson and Milenkovic? Huge box threat, got the fixtures, got the defensive setup, and they have the defensive quality and the coach with, in my opinion, the right mindset, right? So that could be another option for you to take. And then Arsenal there. We spoke about Kai Havertz yesterday, right? What if we pick him up in 18? Wonderful fundamentals, brilliant expected minutes in this congested period. 18, 19, 20, 21, even 22, I think are all pretty good fixtures for him. So I quite like him in that section. I thought I would just show you that so that you are looking at the correct teams to target, and not buying into maybe assets like Cunha, who you might have to ship off in the near future, and hence my reason for producing that. So I hoped it helped, and I will go to the outro. That is all she wrote for Game Week 16's content, ladies and gentlemen. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do drop a like on the video. And for the 40.3% of you and the people who are new around here, make sure to subscribe as we push for 6,000 subscribers. Have a magnificent weekend. The best of luck to you this game week. And consider enjoying someone else's success if you're not having the best of game weeks, or even if you are, you might find a newfound joy in doing so, and you'll enjoy the weekend slightly more. Just an idea for me to push out. I shall see you on the other side. Good luck. Drop your questions in the comments below, and I will, of course, happily answer as many of them as I can. Good luck and goodbye.